Hello, this is Pastor Dave Bryan from the Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City, California. And I'm here today with my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers, and his dog Joe, though Joe is not going to be in the frame. He's sleeping for a while. But anyway, Pete, it's great to have you. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the fight and anything else you want to say as we get started here?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you the 40,000 foot view. We call that just real quick. I joined the Army in 1983. I was an infantryman on Ronald Reagan, and I did a lot of years. Got out in 2022 out of the Texas National Guard. Left active duty in 2015. I was a Green Beret at Fort Bragg. They tried to change the name on us. We got it back, so it's a good thing. We're
Good.
happy that Pete Hexteth is doing his job. But Went to the Texas border. Operation Lone Star kicked off. That was the Texas response to the invasion on the border, where we see a lot of these kids that went missing, up to 500,000 in some cases, listed at 300 something thousand. Tara wrote us, they had explained that information a while back to Congress. So I implicitly know 1,250 miles of the U.S. border real well, and that's Texas. And that's what I do, or that's what I did. I took that uniform off, and put on the Ephesians 6 uniform. We call that. It's an Army of God thing. I was on Tucker Carlson not too long ago, and they asked me, "What's this Army of God thing?" I said, "Well, that's something you learn about in Sunday school." They were trying to Google it, trying to figure out who these people are. Well, we're
Yeah,
out here,
right.
and
Yeah.
so we're now part of a nationwide. We call it a task force, if you will, task force for Christ. There's no real name for it, but we believe in all these men and women that are in this fight. This is many different groups like mine. Mine is a very small group, or very pinpoint tip of the spear kind of guys, but we have other groups that are counter human trafficking elements, to include Bazzel Baz and Dwayne Sawyer and a lot of these other groups that have met and have all gotten together to support each other in this fight, to then support operations like y'all's, where you have the wraparound services, which we can get as many people out, but we've got to have places where they can go. And
Right.
that's what we're looking for. So
Right.
that's the 40,000 foot view of who I am and where I came from and what I'm doing.
Yeah. So Operation Lone Star, that was you were in an official capacity in your involvement in that. And when did that end, Pete?
So it ended for me. It's still ongoing right now. It ended for me on 22 October 2022. That was my last day in
Okay.
service in the Texas National Guard. I had
Right.
39 years total in service between the active and the Guard, and reserves. But the only reason it ended for me, I was a whistleblower and said, "Hey, my troops aren't taking shots," and so that was
Yeah.
okay. I knew there was a time for me to put up those spurs and put on some different ones to go and get on this fight.
Right. Right. All right. So Craig Sawyer, I was just talking to him this morning about the numbers. And of course, there's always the given number and the real number.
Right.
But I think you mentioned that it could easily be twice that. Craig thought even more. He thought that it may be closer to 1 million than a half a million. But the point is, it is really an extreme and almost an unthinkable number. You and I both know that, as I often say, you can't lose 1 million marbles, much less 1 million human beings.
Right.
But tell us a little bit about what's happening to those kids, where they're going, how the networks are working around that, and how the open border in Mexico really fomented that surge in child trafficking.
So essentially, what we're talking about is over the last several years, specifically during the Biden administration, but even before that, that border has been porous since the times of Pancho Villa. Where they they brought cattle across, right? But
Yeah,
now the
right,
cattle is human cattle, and it's in the
right,
form of trafficking. And then with every person that is trafficked, there is money attached to that. And so when you see the cartels making hundreds of millions of dollars, especially during the Biden administration, which is really part of an invasion of our southern border. When
boy,
we
it
look at
was.
invasions, it doesn't necessarily have to be kinetic with bayonets fixed and rifles pointed. it can be something that overwhelms a system or creates chaos. And in that
Right.
chaos comes seams and gaps. And the bad guys work in those seams and gaps where you can't see them, right? They try to work in those.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're making lots of money on each person. I mean, at the time, it was $3,000 for a family unit to come across. If you were an interesting character, let's say from Yemen or from China or from Venezuela, that was $10,000 to pay the cartel members to bring them across. And so we were
Wow.
looking at trying to find a needle in a stack of needles down there. Now,
Yeah.
with the new administration, that all ended, right? So we've essentially stopped the flow, and what I would call a tourniquet was put on this major bleeder in this country.
Yeah.
All right, we still have a lot of little cuts though, and so that's the
Yeah.
operating environment that we're in. Is we are operating in a space now where it's harder for them to hide. It's easier for us to find them, but we're still missing, what I would say probably closer to 1 million. But what I firmly believe, based upon
Wow.
the numbers that I saw come across the border, me personally, 12,500 a week, sometimes that
Wow.
many in 24, 48 hours in Texas border alone. And so
Wow.
those are unaccompanied minors is really where we're focused because of God's most precious. That's where we
Yeah.
look. But they're either being used for sex trafficking, for
Yeah.
slave trafficking, for indentured servitude. So they bring them across and say, okay, we're going to hold a family member, and until you pay us the rest of what you
Wow.
owe us, we're not going to
Wow.
release them until then. And then there, of course, is the more nefarious, and they're all nefarious. Don't get me wrong, but then there's the more egregious cases of organ harvesting and things like that. And that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be a kid from another country. I mean, these could be
Yeah.
kids taken off the streets of the United States. So
Wow.
trafficking does not necessarily have to be an unaccompanied minor. It's just that was the bulk of what we saw on
Yeah.
Operation Lone Star.
Yeah. So now that we have the current administration, of course, there have been some huge improvements. Um, what are the obstacles that you're still up against? Is there still, like, for instance, you're focusing mainly on Texas. What about liberal states like California? I mean, what's happening in some of those states?
So what we have right now is that we do focus on some other states. We did in North Carolina during the hurricanes. We want to make sure kids weren't absconded with, and that seams and gaps of that chaos.
Right. Yeah.
But there are other teams out there, and there's at least one team that I know of that does operate in California, and these are really can be really tenuous, tedious for us to be able to get in and get authorities in order to actually go hands on and grab kids. So
Yeah.
sometimes we have to do what we do mostly is we develop a relationship with our partner law enforcement agencies all the way up to the state level. We don't work a lot with feds just because they haven't helped us in the past, so we don't focus there.
Yeah.
But what we do is we get authorities. Now the authorities allow us to find and fix locations, to find them and fix them, the location, and then for the law enforcement to come in and kick the door and bring them back. However, in an exigent or a felony in progress, when we witness it, we will personally go in and do what we have to do. And then
Yeah.
we do maintain law enforcement credentials. All of my team members in the Texas Council on Law Enforcement maintain a level 4 security peace officer credential.
Mhm.
That allows us to do that. And then sheriffs can deputize us as needed. So that is it's a fine line you got to walk. They like taking former military guys that have some special operations training and understanding. They're a little more less they're a little less apt to just pull out a gun and start shooting, right? I mean,
Right.
they're gonna
Right.
be measure 4 or 5 times before we cut once. We haven't had to
Right.
do that, and we pray we never do. But
Yeah.
that business can be dangerous, but most of the time it can be done by local law enforcement. But there you see different various capabilities within those agencies themselves. So
Yeah.
that's where the monument is. When you ask the question, what are the hardships, what are the difficult parts of this? Is we have a system that when you look at child protective services, what in my case, the state of Texas, particularly when Tara Rodas, who was an insider that worked at the camps on the borders for the feds, she was maintaining and counting heads basically for them inside of those camps and taking care of those kids, but watching them leave and wondering where are they going. Well, then she presented a list to Congress. She gave us some of those lists in Texas alone, in one particular city called Austin, where we had 119 kids in one city block that were given to 5
Wow.
sponsor families. And that's impossible. right?
Wow.
So, we go down there and we try to find those kids. We couldn't find them all, but we found some. And so it's just, that those particularly boys between the age of 12 and 19 that ended up in a gang called Los Cholos, right? You just don't know what you're going to come up against, how they're going to be used.
Yeah.
These kids were smashing windows in cars and stealing stuff and giving it to the guy to fence at the pawn
Mm,
shop. So you just don't know how that's going to look. Every one of them is different.
right.
But that's how it looked for us on the ground. On the on the
Right.
on the grand scale, when we talk to guys like, and we do, Tom Homan, Jason Jones, all these guys with Porter 9-1, formerly, now with the Border Czar team, what we're seeing is they don't have enough hands on deck, right? And there's some other legislation that had come out saying, hey, we're going to specifically, through different codifications of law, use local law enforcement. Well, then now you're subject to the flavor of the leader of that particular county or that
Right.
city, like
Right.
you say, a woke state. Well, if you're
Yeah.
under that flavor and they won't let you do it, now it's incumbent, in my book. I've had this conversation with the feds. It's incumbent upon you to stop the money flow going to child services to those law enforcement entities that are not upholding the law in the
Right.
truest sense, because this is a major crime. I've had these
Right.
arguments with federal law enforcement. We only work on federal crimes that are of major category. Well, are you telling me that stealing a child and giving it to somebody that is not vetted, it's
Yeah.
not a major
Wow.
crime when they're trafficking it,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank God, as I know you do, that we've seen some changes. I think America as a country dodged a bullet in this past election. And thank God some changes are trickling down. What difference has that made for you guys and the work that you're doing on the border?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So what that did was, for us specifically on the border, I'm going to use Eagle Pass for an example. It is one of the main areas we work at. On the other side is a town called Piedras Negras, Black Rocks. That's what that means. So you got Black Rock on the other side of the town, and you got us on this side. And the numbers of people coming across the border with fentanyl have decreased substantially since this administration. The numbers of people coming across the border, we don't see the big family units. Now we're talking about in a day, maybe 50, maybe 80 people in a day that come across versus thousands, right? So
Wow.
that's huge for us. But what we're seeing is that the Mexican government, the federales, are actually stopping people at the ports of entry as they drive across and doing a more thorough search. Now, whether that's the State Department and whether the threat of tariffs upon that nation, however that looks, we'll take it, because that's slowed it down
Yeah.
enough to where we can find those individuals, and it's not a needle and a stack of needles anymore. It may be a needle in a haystack, but at least we can identify it more readily.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank God for every gain that's made.
Yeah.
Now, for those that are listening in, Pete's going to be one of our presenters, going to join us for the Rev 17 conference. It's really just around the corner, Pete. It's coming up June 20th, 21st, 22nd. I want to talk for a minute about what that conference is and why we called it that.
Sure.
Rev 17, the extended name is Destroying the Whore of Babylon. You know, I called it that because that's what the conference is about. And some people said, oh, you know, that's kind of an intense name. It's like, okay, so just to put this in perspective, they're raping children to death. So you think the title is intense? Let's talk about the intensity of what's going on, and try to present a wake up call to get people off their butts in America. So we went ahead and just called it Destroying the Whore of Babylon. We nicknamed it the Rev 17 event because I know, Pete, that you believe in the prophecies of God's word. In Revelation 17, it talks about a time at the end of the age, or we could call it the transition of the ages, where evil is at a crescendo. And of course, the Bible also says that righteousness reaches a crescendo, and the two come back, and the kingdom of heaven overcomes the kingdom of darkness. That's if you read the book right, that is the storyline of redemption. Is that God doesn't just win, but God wins big at the end of the book. Now, in the 2,000-year-old prophecies that talk about that, many of them are included in the book of Revelations, and in chapter 17, it talks about this crescendo of wickedness, and it uses the imagery of a wicked city called Mystery Babylon. It says it's the haunt of every evil spirit, and but it typifies the culmination of evil at the end of the age and the mechanisms behind that evil, and then a personage that is called the whore of Babylon. And the Bible says that she's immoral and brash and brags that nobody can defeat her. She'll rule as queen forever. Nobody can touch her. She drinks a goblet of iniquity filled with the blood of the righteous. And, it's really an ugly picture. But it says that she makes the kings of the earth wealthy through her trafficking. And then right there in the Bible, it lists out what she's trafficking in, and trafficking essentially is to sell for an increase, and she's trafficking really anything that can be turned for a dime. So it goes through gold and silver and precious stones and incense and nonsense. But anyway, it crescendos up to the epitome of evil, and it says, and she traffics in human souls. And so one of the things I try to get people to do, Pete, is slog through all the ugly of Scripture and get to the end story. How does it end? How does the story end? Otherwise you get bogged down like, hey, the Antichrist is going to hand everybody their butt, and, everything's going to fall to hell in a handbasket. No, keep reading. The Antichrist is actually an epic fail. He tries to control the world, which, by the way, no man will ever control, because Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But in this unpacking of things in Revelation, it says that that she traffics in human souls, and it says, but she shall be destroyed in a single day. And the kings of the earth will marvel and say, what happened to the whore of Babylon? She's been completely destroyed. So that's why we're calling this conference. In fact, the insiders know this, but Pete, I originally said, let's call it Jack slapping the bitch off her beast, because it says she rides a beast. And if there ever was a bitch, it would be the whore of Babylon. But anyway, the whole idea is not just to recognize that it's a prophecy that is being fulfilled in our day, because Pete, you would know this better than most. The kings of the earth are being made wealthy through trafficking, the trafficking of human souls.
100%. Yeah, this is when we start chasing the money. This is the other thing that my team does specifically in this group. We chase the money, and we figure it out. And when we were doing it in uniform, when I was doing it as a soldier, and I traced the money, when I got to somebody that was sensitive in the eyes of the Department of Homeland Security, if they were a sensitive person, somebody of importance, they would say, we've got it, we'll take it from here. So there's a modicum of protection that takes place.
Yeah.
Whether they're doing it overtly or whether they're doing it a sin of commission or omission, either way, it's a sin. And so I couldn't do anything. My hands were tied in that sense. My hands are not tied right now. Right.
Yeah.
And I believe, like you, that ages come and go, just like the Roman age and the barbarian age. They didn't end on one day like this is talking about. Most ages had a crossover. So we're going into this kingdom age. Look, when this time comes and she's gone in a day, I believe that. I'm a centurion. You tell me, I read it, I'm a centurion. I believe it. That's the way I've been saying.
Well, I do, Pete, and that's why we're bringing like Pete Chambers from the horse's mouth on what's happening at the border. We're bringing Craig Sawyer. We're bringing in ARC, which is Association for the Recovery of Children. That's Bazzel and Tina Baz. We're bringing in Mary Flynn O'Neill. We're bringing in Mike Smith. We're bringing in Laura Logan. We're bringing in Dr. Doug Frank. We're bringing in a whole lot of people. The thing that we all have in common is we know that the horror of Babylon, the spirit of evil in this age, is making the kings of the earth rich through the trafficking of souls. We know that's happening, not just in America. It's happening all over the world, as you know. And but in addition to knowing it's happening, we are people of the book. We believe that she shall be destroyed in a day, and the kings of the earth will marvel, saying, what happened to the whore who rode on the beast that made us wealthy through her trafficking? And the answer to that is guys like Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers happened. Craig Sawyer happened. Bazzel Baz happened. There's going to be a group of righteous soldiers that rise up at the end of the age, the days we're living at, and they will have the faith and the faithfulness to destroy the whore of Babylon in a single day. And
I'd like to add to that, Dave.
Yeah,
when you read, and I'm preaching to the preacher, but when we read the transfer of wealth that took place between Haman and Mordecai,
come
right?
on.
Instantly,
Yep.
he prepared gallows for Mordecai.
Yeah.
And he swung from those gallows. And those things are not there for a, gee whiz, okay, here's a bedtime story for you, kiddo.
Come on.
These are real stories. This is what I see. I see that transfer of wealth. And it's not just because, what we could do. Think about where we've come with so little, being faithful with a little bit.
Yeah.
And what we could do when that transfer of wealth and what kind of love that we could spread. Because we don't operate in a spirit of fear, but of love and power and a sound mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I just wanted to remind you again that it's coming up soon. If you want to come to the Rev 17 conference and hear all these amazing speakers, really, again, our goal was to bring the best of the best together and to do, a lean left, lean right, fight, but to record that and to just saturate the media market to get people's attention, let them know the extent of the problem, which is huge, but let them know not just the problem, but God's answer to that, which is that people of righteousness, truth, and courage rise up and do something about it. And so I hope you'll come to that. Again, it's happening in Yuba City, California. We're north of Sacramento, 45 minutes. It's June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. I also want to mention this. If you go to churchofgladtidings.com, you can go to the events and find the Rev 17 conference, and you'll need to purchase a ticket. I wish we had room for everybody, but it's limited seating. And so I think there's about 200 tickets left, something like that. But go to Rev 17 at the churchofgladtidings.com events page and get a ticket and then join us for that. Also notice that there is going to be an ARC training the next week. We're hosting it right here at the Church of Glad Tidings. We've done so because Bazzel and Tina are here. They're well reputed to have one of the best, if not the very best, training available anywhere in the world on recognizing a pedophile, a handler, a trafficker, recognizing call signs for kids that are in danger, or even signs of stress that will let you know this child is not with its parent. And there's a lot of things. Some of these guys, like Pete Chambers, was a lieutenant colonel. Bazzel was a Navy SEAL. Craig was a Navy SEAL. The point is, these guys are the best at the best in training and in recognizing signs of duress. And so I want to invite you to sign up either at churchofgladtidings.com or go right to the ARC training. That's the Association for the Recovery of Children. And if you go to their website, you can sign up for their training. It's again, Rev 17 is June 20th, 21st, 22nd, beginning bright and early on the 23rd on a Monday and going all the way through to Saturday is the ARC training. And you will be certified as a representative of the Association for the Recovery of Children. They're trying to build a network. Thank God for Bazzel and Tina and what they're doing. But they're trying to get people in every county in America that can recognize the earmarks of pedophilia, of a chain or a house. We have safe houses. Well, they have very, very unsafe houses where they hold kids and they traffic kids out from. It'll train you on how to recognize that. And as important as anything, it'll train you to look for signs on the internet, on a kid's cell phone. They have a whole team that deals with data information. Also, on not only who to call, but very important today, who not to call. Pete already mentioned it, but you would like to think that any authority is a good guy. Unfortunately, not everybody in authority is a good person. And so you have to know who to call and who to avoid calling. And so I want to encourage you to be a part of that. I'm going to go through it myself. I'm as busy as your average bear, that's for sure. But I'm going to take a week off and go through their training because child sex trafficking is all of our problem. It's not something that's happening just far away and in Bermuda or in Trinidad. It's happening right under our noses, virtually every town in America. And so it's our problem, which means it needs to be our solution. So I want to encourage you to go to churchofgladtidings.com under the events, sign up to come to Yuba City for the Rev 17 conference. Again, inquire into either there on our website, you can do it, or you can go to the ARC training. You have to sign up for that, but I hope you'll consider that as well. And wherever you are, remember, child trafficking is the earmark of the epitome of evil at the end of the age. It is rampant all over the world today, and it is making the kings of the earth wealthy through the money that comes in off trafficking. And we need to raise up and be that army that Pete was talking about. My dad used to say, any idiot can see a problem. It takes a wise man to bring a solution. And so we need to not just say, ho hum, there's a problem, and hope somebody else will address it. But each one of us need to figure out what we can do to be part of the solution. So, Pete, any last words before? I'll see you soon here in Yuba City,
Yeah.
but any last words?
It's labor of love. This is what we do. We are to protect those that are oppressed. That's the motto of the unit I came from, the Green Berets, is Latin word Deo presso liber, to free the oppressed, the widows, the orphans, those that have been oppressed. We stand in the gap, because if we don't stand in the gap, who does?
Right. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers and his faithful dog Joe, unseen today in the anyway, God bless you, and I'll see you soon here in Yuba Dooba Doo.
Yes, sir. Roger that.
All right, see you.